Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. Cities transform in the blink of an eye. The social fabric can change so quickly, it needs to be preserved for future generations to explore and understand. Eric Kostiuk Williams has done just that. He painted a new mural celebrating Toronto's contemporary 2S LGBTQ+ history. The mural is located at the $3 Bill Bar in West Toronto. And Eric is in Studio 7, just a few feet away from me to talk about it. Hey, Eric, thank you for making time this morning. I'm grateful to have you here.
Good morning, Dave. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Eric, what's the background here? How did this project, this mural, come about?
Well, it's kind of the culmination of over a decade of living in Toronto and being an artist and illustrator working in the city. Early in my 20s, I started going out to queer establishments in the city, kind of finding myself. And after spending time in the downtown village, I started becoming interested in bars more in the city's West End that took on more of an alternative do-it-yourself ethos, often run by younger people and with different like drag and art collectives running different parties. Those really came to inspire the work I was making as an illustrator and cartoonist. I started doing poster illustration for these events and comics about my experiences in queer nightlife. And in 2019, I was able to make my first mural for the Beaver, this beloved bar on Queen West, which unfortunately only got to be enjoyed for about a year before lockdown hit and closed everything. For a while, it was uncertain whether the Beaver would survive, but it never ended up opening its doors again. This took a positive turn more recently, though, where one of the former staff at the Beaver reached out to me and told me they were opening a new bar with other members of the queer community and invited me to make something new for them. So it was really wonderful to get to do something like this again.
I have about a million questions based on that response, but I want to start with sort of the mural itself and then get some of the broader stuff. The mural itself, what was that process like for you, and who did you want to feature? What did you want to feature?
Yeah, it was a wild process because I got to make it while the owners were still in the process of renovating and building the bar, so we were kind of working in tandem for about a month. I really wanted to highlight Toronto's queer history, reaching quite far back to figures from the 1960s, like the trans musician Jackie Shane, who lived in the US but spent time in Toronto in the 60s and actually ended up having a #1 radio hit in Toronto called Any Other Way. And her work was kind of reassessed in recent years, and she's been kind of re-celebrated by the queer community. But I wanted to mix that in with more recent references to bars in the West End that have closed recently, like the Beaver and the Hen House, which I drew in the mural, kind of represented as a literal beaver and hen dancing together on a light-up disco floor. I also wanted to include elements musically more recent to Toronto, like The Teaches of Peaches, this seminal album by Peaches, this electro-clash musician who lives in Berlin now but got her start in Toronto in the early 2000s and kind of defined the sound of alternative music for the city and for like North America broadly, I think. I also felt it was important to include depictions of community members we've lost recently in Toronto, like Sandy de Almeida and Eric Weatherspoon, who were both two beloved bartenders in Toronto's West End. And Eric was a friend of mine who passed away during lockdown. So it was very, very important to me to get to depict the two of them. And I wanted to do so in a way that wasn't overly somber, but more celebrating the impact they had on our lives and to kind of cherish their memories. So yeah, all of it together is in hopes of like celebrating what's come before while we create something new and exciting, you know?
You've said it a couple times here, the West End. And I find this to be such an interesting concept because Toronto is gargantuan and sprawling. I think that's even an understatement, that Toronto is gargantuan and sprawling. And there are all these neighborhoods that are sort of named or pigeonholed, right? That people might think of the Village as Church Street, or you think of Little Italy as parts of the West End, or Chinatown as part of Spadina. But it really matters to talk about diversity, not just based on a street or a neighborhood, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny how relative just geographically it gets to, like it's been called the West End since the 2000s, but now, of course, the city stretches out so much further.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like, relatively speaking, it's kind of central now, I guess.
I always say the downtown core runs from the Don River pretty much to Etobicoke at this point. I'm like, that's the downtown core, and it runs all the way up to Finch Street in the north. But I do ask that question with a certain level of earnestness, though, because there are diverse histories inside of diverse history, right? I know when I used to live in Ottawa, Pride Month is in a different month than the Pride Parade, and something that one of the local organizations did was a walk-in tour of downtown of notable historical events that maybe you might not get during the parade season or during those different components. And it's a reminder about the people and the places that might not be maybe as institutionally recognized as maybe the community more broadly.
Absolutely, yeah. That's something I focus on a lot in my work, both with this mural and more broadly, is just, taking down that history and celebrating it. Because as you said, it's not guaranteed to be preserved by traditional means. It's often kind of, especially with queer history, it's often up to us to record it ourselves and to pass it down and let people know all that was happening. And I find with Toronto's queer history, we're often, and in Canada broadly, we're often quick to defer to bigger, like American icons and elements of queer history. But I don't know, I think it's really important to celebrate all that we've accomplished. Especially since I find the tone in Toronto, understandably, can be a bit pessimistic with how quickly things change and how much we're losing. I think that's important to recognize and criticize, but I also want to celebrate the things we've accomplished.
Yeah, the city changes fast, right? And as you said, what maybe used to be the West End is now just an extension of the downtown core, and the condos are coming, and the office buildings are coming. Eric, you touched on it a bit there, but I think it's worth exploring a little bit further about you as an artist. What does it mean to be an artist in a city?
Oof. I'm so grateful to be doing it because the city doesn't make it easy for us, certainly. It's very difficult to do it full time and in a way that's sustainable. It's something that I've worked towards for over a decade. But by the same token, it's a really wonderful city to be making art in because of the diversity and the size. Like there's people from all over the world connecting and kind of sharing their cultural history and influences. So I've lived here for 15 years, almost half my life, and I'm still finding myself really inspired and rejuvenated by just like all the new stuff coming in and how much there still is to explore and investigate. So there's a lot to it, yeah.
Toronto, for as much as I mock it, I've lived here for about 3 years now, 3.5 years. I mock it a lot. I try really hard, especially because this is a national television show. It's really important that the people out there know that this isn't just a Toronto-focused show. But I will give Toronto its flowers. There is art and culture here in a significant way that isn't just happening at the Air Canada Centre or the Rogers Centre, right? It's not just Van Halen playing a show at a stage. There is a thriving thriving art culture in this city.
I agree, yeah, and you sometimes have to look kind of hard for it,
Yes.
just because it finds strange little crevices to exist in, just because people are always being displaced from venues and having to innovate in new ways.
Yeah, and that there's potentially a million things going on any given Friday night, right?
Sure.
You need to sort of find your subcultures, which can be difficult to do because there's literally so much noise.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Eric, one last question here, and I probably should have kept on the mural for another moment here. What's been the community response since it got unveiled? It's been a couple months, right, since it got unveiled?
Oh, yeah,
weeks?
a couple weeks actually.
Yeah.
It's been, the bar opened finally a couple weeks ago, and it's been really overwhelming in a positive way already. I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying how much it means to them and appreciating the specific references to community members who've passed away and to venues we've lost. It means so much to connect with people over it just because my practice is often very solitary. You're kind of hunched over, drawing on a little piece of paper or a wall in this case. So it's really gratifying to get to share it with people at the end of the day and have conversations about it.
Eric, where can folks follow along with your work?
Oh yeah, I am pretty active on Instagram at eric.k.w. And I keep a website as well at kostiukwilliams.com.
Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to come in today. I'm really glad to hear the mural's receiving nice feedback, and keep up the excellent work. Keep the culture in the city vibrant. Somebody's got to do it, so I'm counting on you.
I'll try. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric. That's Eric Kostiuk Williams, a Toronto artist and illustrator. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-télé or download the podcasts wherever you listen. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI-télé or download the podcasts wherever you listen.